So, a lot of you all may not know this about me from looking at my YouTube channel or my other videos, but I have autism. I have a very high functioning form of autism. It was formerly known as Asperger's syndrome, but we don't call it no more because it was a Nazi German scientist, and that's a rabbit hole for you all to go down on your own terms. But me in particular, I felt like I wanted to address my first video for the new year to talk about this condition because I'm seeing a lot of documentaries such as the Telepathy tapes that's out right now. And I have my thoughts on that and I'll address that later. But my upbringings, I grew up in PG County, Maryland, and I was diagnosed with this very early because they caught it. It was very hard for me in school to communicate with others. I was that type of person who was like, oh, awkward. And I'd introduce myself. I couldn't look anybody in the eye. I was like, hi, my name's Marco. Like, eye contact felt very uncomfortable for me. Or just holding a conversation in something that I just wasn't interested in. But I remember when I was a child, I had a very big obsession with the Titanic. And that's one thing about us with autism. Like, we tend to hyper focus on a subject. So I had a huge obsession with the Titanic, cruise ships. I'd watch the Titanic over and over and over again. And in doing that, I actually learned a better way with eye contact. I saw Rose do what was known as the triangle method, where you're looking at the forehead, eyes, and up. You have like 3 points of contact. If it's something of like a business associate, you kind of look at the eyes, forehead, and keep your eyes in like a triangle, nose, eyes, forehead, like in that kind of have points of reference. But if it's like a love interest, you make eye contact, look down to the mouth, up, back around to the eyes, like kind of make your eyes and do this triangle shape on her face. That's what made me learn to have better eye contact with people. But when it came to communication, that was kind of something that I stumbled across where I got better as time progressed, such as when I worked at jobs that got me out of my comfort zone. Right now, I am a firefighter, and we need structure as people who have autism. We need to have the same routine, but the fire department, this every day is not the same, and it kind of breaks you out of your routine, and you have to get very personable with people and your patients to really connect to them. And I wanted to be better with communication. So I looked up how to be better with communication, with public speaking, trying Toastmasters, and here I am today. I'm the author of How to Listen to the Universe, and I have a successful YouTube channel and TikTok channel, all these different accolades from you all not truly knowing who I am, but I want to give you all the unmasked version of me. Like, you can't really see right now, but I'm sitting crisscross applesauce in a chair, and I'm somewhat fidgety because that's how I'm comfortable. I have to gather my thoughts. But going back to these telepathy tapes, as someone with autism, I think that there's pros and cons to it with the whole facilitated communication, where you look at the research into that, it shows that the person who's kind of doing the back and forth between the individual is the one who's kind of prompting them in a way to give the answer. I don't know if you all seen the documentary, the Telling Them You Love Me, where the woman was, she was she had a kid who she was teaching to talk. He had, I believe he had Down syndrome. I don't remember it in its entirety, but I remember that by it's the documentary starts off where you're like, you feel her side where she's like, oh yes, he's a soul, he has rights, he's a human, he wants to express that. And then towards the end, you kind of see that, this is kind of messed up what you're doing. Like, I'm all for seeing all sides, the both perspectives, but like towards the end of the documentary, I was kind of like, because they had this psychologist come in and say, yeah, he has the intellectual capability of a third grader, and I think less than that. And it was just like, wow. But she made him out to be something where he was very advanced. He was having these intellectual conversations, and she was calling him the man when his name was D Man. Like, you knew there was a bunch of red flags with that documentary. But I feel like some of these documentaries do exploit the parents because they give them a false form of false hope. Now, I'm not saying that telepathy is not a thing. I want you all to know that you don't have to be neurodivergent to have telepathy. We all have this capability. In fact, when I was first dating my girlfriend, if you look at the cover of my book, How to Listen to the Universe, you'll see me sitting on top of the mountain meditating because that's where I got my strongest download. I remember we were going on our hike and she said, I love you. Like, we kissed on top of the mountain. She said, I love you. And I was like, what? This was in that awkward stage where we were 2 months into dating and you don't really want to say I love you because you don't know if the other person feels that way. But that was the stage of the relationship we were in. And she said, I love you in her head. And I was like, what? You love me? I heard her. I don't like calling telepathy. I think it's just you're tapping on the same frequency as a person. It seems like it's mind reading, but it's literally just being on the same wavelength as that individual. And you see this with people who you truly love. But she said, I love you. And I said, what? You love me? And she said, yeah. How'd you know? I was like, I heard you say it. And that from then on, we just started saying, I love you. But it was like, I felt her frequency first. And we've been in sync ever since. And I wanted to get too graphic, but even our sexual chemistry is in sync to where we both reach the mighty O at the same time because that's how in sync we are. And I think that everyone has that capability to be in sync with anyone if you truly have that connection. That's how you know that's the one for you. But as far as telepathy goes, we all have these special capabilities, but neurodivergent people, I feel like that we were put in a box that kind of is contained to this 3D world where we're called special, or we get separated from the rest of the individuals where they don't see our gifts, where we say, I hear electricity. That could get you put in a psych ward, or you hear these voices, you hear these frequencies from higher realms coming down into you. And you tell this to someone who has a Western medicine mindset, and they kind of write you off. And I always believe that, I know that I'm going off on a different tangent here, but I believe that there is a war on consciousness where they look for us in school age, where they'll do these hearing tests to see if you can hear these frequencies. Like I just said, hearing the lights, hearing the electricity. They're searching for those type of individuals so they can experiment on them and do these different types of experiments. So you could be a CIA operative, remote viewing for individuals. Like, they look for us. MK Ultra, all of that, the Project Stargate, that stuff is real. They look for gifted kids because they know that the kids who are incarnating, I always believe that the greatest trick the devil's ever played was tricking the world into believing he is God. They know that the kids who are incarnating right now in this particular timeline are gifted. They're the ones who are going to usher in this new age of enlightenment with their gifts. Now we are starting to see that we are very advanced, highly advanced beings. We're more than our physical body. You ever astral project? You start to see that higher beings, they communicate telepathically. And I feel like us neurodivergent individuals, this is what we naturally do. We know how to read the room. We know how to connect with individuals. And it's a bottom down kind of way where if I'll feel the room before I enter it. We have these different gifts. And we just tap into them. Everybody has it. I'm not just saying it's just neurodivergent people, neurotypical. It's just neurodivergent people just know how to directly focus that frequency, focus that energy into whatever it is that they want to be locked in on. So if I go into a room and I feel, being a Virgo, we're ruled by our gut, but I feel with my gut that this isn't for me. Like there's somebody's energy in here that I'm not really gelling with before even talking to them. That's tuned in. That's what we have. But individuals who have high functioning autism like me, you have this because like you get into conversations that only interest you, for example. And I know, like this entire YouTube video, there's no script. This is just me talking to you all just based off of what I'm passionate about, like combining the science and spirituality side of things and looking at it from my perspective. Like, I am so glad that my dad didn't put me on medications when I was younger. They wanted me to go on medications, but my dad was like, no. I wouldn't be who I am today if I was on medications. Now, I'm not knocking anybody who is on medications. If you need that for the balance, that's okay. But my case in particular, I feel as if medications would have suppressed me. And this is what I mean, the worn consciousness, where I think that they suppress our superpowers, our natural, supernatural abilities with medications, or banning psychedelics, or not making magic mushrooms, to be honest. Just call a spade a spade. Magic mushrooms were how I first started to recognize the voice that's always been talking to me, but it was just how I was able to like say, this is the voice that's been talking to me. The universe was giving me these signals of like, find my eye, now listen. Like that's what the magic mushrooms did for me, where it taught me how to really find that higher self, that higher voice that's connected to source. And one thing about us neurodivergent people, you can't control us. We have this great gift of discernment. So growing up with religion, I was never one of those people that would just sit in church and just say, oh yeah, that's the ultimate truth. Jesus is the way. I had questions. And like I said earlier in this video, we see things from the bigger picture. So I asked multiple questions, and that's what led me to having a better appreciation towards not just Christianity, but all religions, because I see how they are describing the exact same thing. And that's the problem, where humans have this limited perspective where we just see our perspective, but we're not zooming out to see the bigger picture. And that's why we have these wars. That's why we have these different countries that are fighting each other, because they think that their perspective of source is right. But when you truly know source, you will never argue your perspective because you know. It's a difference between I think and I know. And I know source. So I will never argue with anybody who's like, oh yeah, Jesus is the way. Hey, that's what you believe. Kudos to you. But I know how I connect to source, and I connect through meditation. I wrote in my book, How to Listen to the Universe, the true way to connect to source. There's so many different ways to connect to source. We're doing whatever it takes for you to get into that flow state. That space where time and space doesn't exist, where you are connecting with your higher self. They are merging into one. That is that flow space. And when you find what connects to that, you become supernatural. And I think that neurotypical people just naturally do that on a daily basis. You'll notice a lot of neurodivergent people do this on a daily basis. You'll notice a lot of neurodivergent people, they're into the mathematics, the science, music. They're great with pattern recognition, where they can hear a song and immediately duplicate that. Not all, because I'm not like that. Like, we all have our different gifts. But pattern recognition, where you can recognize different individuals, their behaviors, they're different towards you, or you can recognize the different number sequences or the different colors. It's just you recognize things quicker. You process. You are a natural computer. Some of us can even focus our eyes like a camera, like where it's just like I'm not focused, but now I'm focused. Like that's neurodivergency in a nutshell, where you are truly gifted. So I just want you all to know that if you have any of these neurodivergent tendencies where you can't hold a conversation, or you feel overwhelmed when you're in large crowds, you hyper focus on subjects and you gravitate to a certain person who's willing to listen. Like if you have a neurodivergent child, if you want to connect to them, this is the best thing you do. Find out what they like and listen to them. Let them open up, and you're going to see a little sparkle in their eye just blossom, because you're now stepping into their world. They're getting into this flow state where their imagination and their creativity is now firing on all cylinders. We have this natural capability to connect their left and right hemisphere of our brains, and this is what's required for you all to reach these higher states of consciousness. So I know I just went off on a rant about this, but I just really felt the need to do a video like this to really get you all to understand that you all are special if you have autism, ADHD, even schizophrenia. Like I've had schizophrenic patients who say they hear stuff, and in the science world, you're supposed to like not enforce and encourage what these behaviors are. And this is why the documentaries like Tell Them You Love Me or the Telepathy tapes are like discredited, because it's like they're giving in to what they are being told. You're not supposed to tell a schizophrenic patient or someone who hears these voices, oh yeah, I hear them too. You're not supposed to entertain it. But as someone who was able to relate, it's like I have to take a certain approach to it. And I don't know if you all know, like when I started my spiritual journey, it was because a woman who had a near-death experience. I remember I was working on the ambulance, and this woman was 33 years old. Can't say what she died of, but just know she died for maybe about 10 minutes, solid heart stop. Her family was doing CPR, which is why I think that's what truly saved her life. But this woman was clinically dead. And then within 5 minutes of us arriving, we were doing CPR, we got a pulse back. And then I immediately remember like, wow, she's the youngest person I've ever gotten back. Like something in my head was just like that voice that I always say, listen to, that gut feeling, that voice was telling me, ask her what she's seen. I guarantee you, she's going to tell you something that's going to blow your mind. And she sure enough did. We got to the hospital at Franklin Square, and usually we're supposed to go to Bayview Hospital with the proximity of where she was, but they were on reroute or something. But we ended up going to Franklin Square. And what was different is they didn't immediately put her in the ICU. They put her in a regular room like she was a regular patient. We're like, yo, she just came from the other side. But I forgot the little pulse ox probe on her finger. And I'm a rook, like 2 years in the fire department. I'm like, I need to get this back, or else I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm not trying to do any paperwork. So I go back in the room and I get it, and I see this woman. She's just in a blank stare. And you could tell she's been through the cosmic ringer. And I asked her, what did you see? She said, I saw everything. I saw the beginning of time. I saw the end of time. I saw every life I ever lived. I was one with the universe. Everything that I was wanting from you guys brought me back to. And I'm mad because I don't know my purpose. And I truly think, not to sound selfish, that her purpose was truly to awaken that within me. That source consciousness that I knew was in there all along to share with the rest of the world. And I truthfully would never be where I am today without that encounter. But the only reason I connected to her was because I related to her. I had my own moments where I seen my past lives and I seen them, they come as dreams, they come as astral travel, or I'm traveling to different realms through my consciousness. And that will sound crazy to the Western world, but this is how my mind has always been. So if your mind works that way, I just want you all to know that you are not alone. And if you made it through the end of this video, I really appreciate it. I will get back to my regular schedule with talking about my aliens and going off on my tangent about the inner earth theory. I know I promised you all that video, it's coming, but I just felt the need to say this. So truly thank you all for watching.